Welcome to the City Current radio show. I'm your host, Andrew Bartolotta. Today's guest is Celene Aubry, director and shop manager at Hatch Show Print, the iconic letterpress print shop continuously operating since 1879 in Nashville, Tennessee. Celene is the first woman to run the letterpress shop in its 140 plus year history. Celene, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to tell stories about this great place.
Give viewers a quick history for the nearly 150-year-old print shop and its vast collection of vintage type and hand-carved imagery.
So the shop opened in 1879 here in Nashville. It was founded by two brothers, Charles and Herbert. And just to give you context, 1879 is the same year that Albert Einstein was born, and it's the same year that the light bulb was patented. So when they opened the shop, there actually wasn't any electricity here in Nashville. We make the posters today the exact same way that they made them in 1879. We carry on the traditions. Here at Hatch Show Print, the design component for all of our work has never left the shop. So we still, to this day, design everything we print, and we only print what we design here in the shop. And we're still using wood type, handset wood type, handset metal type, that the two brothers, Charles and Herbert, purchased and made because they were both very skilled wood carvers, made here in the shop when they were running the shop. And then Charles's son, Will T., when he took over the shop in 1921 or so, carried on the tradition with the wood type and the hand carving of the blocks. And everything that you'll see on a Hatch poster, from the wood type to the imagery, a lot of it originates, the graphic elements or the hand carved imagery, not the photographs per se, but the hand carved imagery. The creation of all of that, or pretty much all of that, originates here in the shop with the designers, even up till today. So for instance, right now, as we're chatting, I know that one of the staff in the shop is actually working on carving a fresh block for some posters that he will be printing probably next week or the week after, and he's carving it in linoleum. We don't always carve in wood today. We sometimes carve in linoleum, and it's literally floor tile that hasn't been waxed or polished, but it makes a great printing surface. And so he's carving that today. He'll use it next week, and then it's something that we can, just like all of the wood type that we have, that some of which is 150 plus years old, same with the metal type, and some of the hand carved blocks that we still use, we can continue to use those blocks for years and years and years and years, decades, hopefully, on other posters when that image or graphic element makes sense for another poster design or another project. What we do is letterpress printing, which most simply put is letters pressed into paper with ink in between. And all of our presses date. We have presses that are 100, and we have one that is from 1896. That's probably our oldest press. And then we have some presses from the early 1960s, and those are our youngest presses. And we still use and we maintain those presses ourselves. Today, the posters aren't necessarily meant as advertisements, much like they were when Charles and Herbert and then Will T. were running the shop, because up until about the mid 20th century, the dominant medium was print for advertising, and the dominant process was letterpress printing. You know, books, posters, business cards, letterhead, ephemera, all of that was letterpress printed. Most of it was letterpress printed. Now the posters don't have to tell you or sell you. We carry these little things in our pockets, these cell phone things that have way too much information on them for us to consume. But since those things help us find out when our favorite artists are playing and where they're playing, the posters don't have to do that for you anymore. They get to celebrate the event, whether it's a live show at a venue or somebody's wedding or a trade show or a conference or a meeting or something like that, or an anniversary of the business or something like that. So now the posters are more commemorative, and we get to have a lot of fun with the graphics, the visuals, and the color. So, and that's what we do.
I think one of the coolest parts about Hatch Show Print is that it's a working museum per se, and you can tour it on site at the Historic Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. What can visitors see and learn when they come to Hatch?
Well, we're working in the shop, 5 days a week. We still operate as a business, even though we are part of the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. We continue operating as a letterpress, poster, and design shop, because part of our mantra or motto is preservation through production. And what that means for us as a living museum is that we continue to use the materials and the equipment, and that preserves the legacy and the lifespan of the process and of the materials and the equipment. And then getting our work out in the world preserves people's awareness of it and hopefully appreciation for it. And so people can see us actually working on the posters and printing the posters. Most of our presses line the outside of our shop, which runs along the lobby here on Representative John Lewis Way here in downtown Nashville. And it's 80 feet of glass, so folks can stand outside the shop and watch as the posters come off the presses, which is the best part, because that's when the color is all applied and the story is complete and you can see the full process. And then right now I'm sitting in what I call our mini print shop within a print shop. It's our classroom, and part of the tour is that you get to come in here, and the walls are lined, as you can see, with the history of Hatch in print. Some of our posters and ads throughout the decades. And you learn about the history of the shop, but then you also get to hand ink and print a commemorative print to take home with you as part of the process. So you get to actually, try your hand at printmaking, which is great because it really gets you up close and personal with some of the materials that we're using every day in the print shop. And then later, probably later this fall, we'll start to add back in some of the other programming that we offer, some sort of free form hand printmaking on paper and fabric and things like that, using some of the blocks, both historic and recent, that we've carved in the shop. That gives folks an opportunity to get inky in a more free form and creative way, which is super fun for adults, especially on a Saturday night here in Nashville. Or Friday night. But yeah, that's part of the process. You get to check out what we're doing live and in person, and then see the results of our work. And in our gallery, you can see we have the opportunity to reprint some of our historic advertising art, because it's just so classic and timeless. And you can see that in the gallery, and you can actually purchase it and take it home with you. And it's a pretty low price point for a, interesting piece of Nashville history and Hatch Show print history.
Well, speaking of purchasing prints, my wife and I are huge fans of Hatch Show prints and have several prints in our home, either from concerts at the Ryman or part of your in-house collection. What are some of your favorite pieces that you and your team have created over the past over 140 years? And what are some unique pieces that may have been instrumental parts of history?
One of the great things about working in a place like Hatch Show Print, where, as you said, nearly a century and a half of history exists in the walls and on the walls, is that you're seeing touchstones of America throughout those 150 years. So we're seeing the, history not only of entertainment, but with advertising, it was advertising local businesses like our local grocery stores and shoe stores and things like that. And it would run the gamut from that to what would be considered historic events in both American history and Nashville history, such as the first time the Rolling Stones played Nashville in 1965. And then the time they played Nashville in 2015 when they were celebrating 50 years together, and we did a poster for that. And we have, a photo plate from the 1965 advertisements that we made. And same for Led Zeppelin when they came to town in 1970. But also, advertisements related to area churches and Fisk University, which, you know, is the reason why Nashville is called Music City USA, because of their wonderful singers who traveled the world and introduced Nashville to the world. We're connected to all of that through the work that we've made, and you can see it in the prints, but you can remember it in the typography that's from those prints that still exists in the drawers in our print shop, and then some of the hand carved blocks. In terms of favorite posters, you know, for me, I'm always looking forward to the next poster that's coming off the press. And so that is what I, you know, come to work for every day, is the excitement of who do we get to work with, or whose history are we going to become a part of, and who's going to become a part of our history, if it's for the first time or the 50th time. That's what's fun for me.
Are there any unique or fun stories that tie into Hatch Show Print, whether about a design, musician, politician, or historical movement? I know you talked about some of those, like the Rolling Stones. Is there any celebrity per se that has stopped by and saw the process of their print being made, or any fun stories that tie along there?
What is fun is introducing our process to folks who might not have been familiar with it, or are amazed that it still happens. We do get to work with another iconic and historic entity here in Nashville, the Ryman Auditorium. And they're a little younger than we are, but we've been working with them since they've opened in the late 1800s. And we typically do a poster for nearly every show that happens there. And so when somebody is appearing there and they either didn't fully grasp what it was that we were making for them, or and then learn more about the process and then see their wall of posters there at the Ryman Auditorium, and they get it, and then they come and visit the shop and make the connection between how passionate we are about what we do and connecting through people through making posters that are both appealing but also tell stories, you know, through color and design and things like that. They really hook into that creative process. And, you know, from somebody like Conan O'Brien to Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin, for whom we made those posters in 1970, but we got to make posters for him when he moved to Nashville and started making music, and make those posters when he went on tour in the 90s and early 2000s. It's fun to be, you know, here, and he comes into the shop and he sees our process and really gets into it and digs it. And that's been, that's always a pleasure. But honestly, it's just as exciting to introduce this process to somebody who is using it to celebrate a milestone that maybe is only special to a small group of people. And I'm thinking of, we do posters for a venue in Durham, North Carolina called the Durham Performing Arts Center. And we did a poster to welcome the Phantom of the Opera tour that stopped there at Durham. And that crew, that team, the crew and the performers for that roadshow didn't know that they were getting it, and they saw it and they loved it. And when they came to Nashville, they came to the shop and they ordered a poster in advance of their 1000th performance, because they wanted that poster not to sell to anybody or give away to anybody. It was specifically for the cast and crew who had been together for 1,000 shows. And it was going to happen, I think, in Chicago in a couple months' time. And they wanted to make sure that they had something that was special to remind them of all that time they had spent together, and something that was worthy of such a milestone for a group of people. And, you know, that's what we love, is that they discover it somehow and then they come to us and we get to share it even more.
Being an institution around for so long, there are generations of families who have used Hatch Show Print for their wedding invitations or for a corporate event. year after year, or you can look at the posters behind you, and there's so many huge historical events, but also those moments that are significant for, like you said, those smaller group of families. Like at our wedding, we had the iconic poster that y'all sell about, eat, drink, and be married. And so that's something that hangs up in our kitchen, and every day we remember that was at our wedding, and oh, by the way, it's a Hatch Show print. So I mean, it's really cool that there are so many tie-ins, both from a small intimate perspective to the Rolling Stones. So it's really cool to see the history of Hatch Show print play in not only the American advertising history, but also families that look at it every day and see the importance in it. Where can people go to learn more about Hatch Show print? Y'all have a great video series. Talk about where people can learn online, and then where they can go to see you in person.
Thank you for asking, first of all. We do have a pretty robust website, hatchshowprint.com. There's a whole section, for those who are interested in the custom poster process, where we make a poster for their event or activity. It's called Custom Design, and you can find that on the website. There is a great section of cool videos taken inside the shop and out in the world. I'm remembering a couple years ago when we got our, circa 1948 neon sign repaired. We went down to Columbia, Tennessee, and filmed in the sign shop that we had worked with to have them repair that and bring it back to its full glory. So it runs a gamut in terms of videos, which is super fun. We also have a fun Instagram account. It's just at Hatch Show Print. Here in Nashville, we are at 224 Representative John Lewis Way South, right in the same building as our brothers and sisters, shall I say, at the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. So it's kind of a one-stop destination. You can come and spend some time in the museum. They have some fabulous exhibits. You can take a tour of Studio B, which is the RCA recording studio where Elvis Presley recorded thousands of his hits, and Dolly Parton recorded, and I think almost tried to demolish by accident her first day of recording, but I'll let them tell you that story. And then you could come to the shop and you can see us working and check out some of our gifts and things, and even take a Hatch tour if you're interested. We offer those every day of the week, and see what else there is here in downtown Nashville, because the city's pretty vibrant these days.
Celene, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.